The Nuggets have never won a road Game 6 in 6 tries in their history. Reversing that trend for Nikola Jokic and Denver means closing out the Spurs in San Antonio tonight. The Silver and Black face a second straight first-round exit unless they can revive their ailing offense tonight. Hey there, everybody. Welcome in. It's game time from our Atlanta studio. Good to have you along with us here on a playoff Thursday night. Brendan Haywood right there. That's the Hall of Famer, Grant Hill. I'm Matt. 10 teams still alive in the playoffs after the Rockets finished off Utah last night. The Nuggets have a chance to pare that number down by 1 if they can continue trending positively against the Spurs tonight in Game 6. Mike Malone reminded us after Tuesday's Game 5 win that this is Nikola Jokic's first taste of the playoffs, and it tastes good so far. He's averaged better than 20 points, 11 boards, and 9 assists, and turned it over just 2 times per. Jamal Murray has gotten better as the series has progressed, and he's averaged 24 points on 57% shooting over the last 2 games, both Nuggets wins. On the other hand, surprise star Derek White is going the other way. Since a career-high 36 in Game 3, he scored a total of 20 over the last 2 games on 8 of 19 shooting. Denver's bench is also leaving a mark, outscoring San Antonio so far by 35 points in the series. Malik Beasley is a big part of that group, and earlier today, he stopped by Playoff Central Live.
We're here. It's 3-2 now. The experience has been amazing. I think we've done really well as a young team, showing that we can play in this league, and we want to continue that tonight and try to close out the series.
So you guys have a ton of balance. 7 players scoring in double figures in Game 5, not to mention shooting the deep ball. 14 threes in Game 5. How valuable is having that type of firepower?
Well, we haven't been knocking down shots lately, and last night or the night before we did a really good job. So we're staying with it, moving the ball, shooting it with confidence, and playing well. And that's what we got to do to stay together, especially against a Spurs team like them.
Offensively, you've been impressive, double figures in 3 of the 5 games, but defensively, you all are 26-2 when holding the opponent under 100 points. How difficult is that going to be to maintain that intensity against the Spurs, who are pretty great on their home floor?
Oh, they're great on the home floor, but we just got to stay together, communicate, get back in transition, not let the crowd get into it too easy. So we're going to try to get it on 100 tonight and get another win.
I remember Denver ended a 14-game losing streak in San Antonio with their Game 4 win. This is the youngest playoff team in the Western Conference, and Mike Malone made a point of saying it the other day. Jokic has never been through this before. He's their best player. He's their all-star, and he's been awfully good in this series. What's impressed you, first of all, and what can the Spurs throw at him at this point in the series?
Well, I mean, it's been more of the same, but what we've seen throughout the year. I mean, obviously, he's a young player, first time on this particular stage, but the way Denver plays, so much of their offense is through Jokic, and his versatility, his passing, it's infectious. It spreads. Everyone plays that way, and so he has, settled down and found a comfort zone, not trying to do too much, but playing within himself, doing a good job defensively on the boards as well, and just playing like he's played throughout the season. Yeah. I mean, you said it's the youngest team in the playoffs. I think the 8th youngest playoff team of all time.
Ever, yeah.
Ever, and they have adjusted to some adversity, getting down in the series, righting the ship, playing good basketball on the road Game 4, taking care of business Game 5. Now this will be their toughest task, trying to close out a team that's well coached and experienced like the Spurs.
Yeah, when you talk about what can the Spurs do to Jokic, I think the biggest thing they have to focus on is trying to involve him in multiple screen and rolls on the other end to try to wear him out, to try to make him tired. Because when you look at what he does offensively, you can't really double the Joker because they use him all over the court. They use him in pick and pop situations to dribble handoff and shoot the ball. They use him in the high post sometimes. They use him in the mid post. They'll run some cross screens for him to get him down on the block. So Coach Malone does an excellent job moving him all around the court. It's hard to say, hey, we're going to double this guy here because sometimes it's not great areas to double a player in, especially in the middle of the court. But what you can do, try to make him tired. Try to make him feel you a little bit. And I would involve him in multiple screen and rolls, and especially situations where he has to run from one side of the court to the other. I might set a pin down on Jokic to have the man that he's guarding set a screen on the other side of the court just to get him moving, constantly involved in the action, and try to get into his legs that way.
Yeah, it's interesting because he is one of those guys, as you guys know, who just plays at his own pace.
Yeah.
Very little speeding up Nikola Jokic. Jamal Murray's performance obviously was a big story the first couple of games of this series. He really struggled. Then he got it going. He's been really good the last couple of games. How has he gotten better, or what is he doing differently?
I think he's just playing with more confidence. And the playoffs are a different monster. Young players always hear the playoffs are a different animal, and they think that veterans are just talking. And then you get into the playoffs and you see the game slows down. You see more attention to detail. You see that it's a little bit harder to score and get to your spots against teams. And so I think Jamal Murray, it took him a couple games to really get used to that. But when he's playing well and he's aggressive, they're playing well. And no matter if he's making shots or missing shots, he has to still continue to be that same aggressive player that he's been all season long. I like what I've seen from him in these last couple of games.
In Game 4, Mike Malone made a lineup change, brought in Torrey Craig to the starting lineup. That put Will Barton on the bench, and Malone has had a lot of praise for Barton in terms of how he's reacted to that. But in general, the Nuggets bench, as we just showed you a moment ago, is outplayed San Antonio's. What do you like about what they've brought?
Well, in part, you have a guy like Barton who's more than capable. Now he's going against second units and brings, a scoring component, an aggressive-ness. He's kept his head and not sort of pouted or felt sorry for himself, has come out and played well. But, yeah, they have really just had their way against San Antonio's bench. And then, of course, Clark has done a masterful job of at least slowing down White. White was having his way those first 3 games, but inserting him into the lineup, he's done a really good job on White. And it's a lot to ask for a second-year player and Derek White to be a go-to guy like he was in Game 3. But they're going to need him. They're going to need San Antonio, but Clark's done a fantastic job.
Well, Greg Popovich has talked about Derek White and how this is a learning experience. He's not putting too much on White in terms of expectations, because remember, this is a guy who averaged 10 points a game during the regular season. The 36 was the anomaly, not the norm for him. But one big change, Brendan, is they brought in Gary Harris and moved him over onto White, and that's made a huge difference after that 36-point game.
Well, Gary Harris is a very good defender, and what he does is he's doing a great job of keeping White in front of him. Now, this time he goes around the screen, but he continues to get in on the play, and he's able to affect the shot. Now, this time, look, he's navigating the screen. He sees the communication, goes underneath the screen, slides his feet, moves his feet again. The whole thing that Gary Harris is trying to do is to make sure he stays between White and the basket. White is excellent when he gets to the basket. The jump shot is really not his strength right now. Gary Harris helps right there. Now, excellent closeout. Doesn't over-close out, doesn't over-help, moves his feet, and continues to challenge White at the end of the play. And what we saw when White got off in that game where he had the big game, I saw a lot of bad closeouts. People were responding to White like he was a knockdown three-point shooter, and that's not the case. You have to close out short, meaning you have to just take a couple of steps, chop your steps, and make White come to you. And then when he comes to you, slide your feet. Gary Harris does the best job of anybody on Denver of guarding Mr. White.
Remember, White was 8 of 9 in the restricted area in that Game 4. He's only taken 10 shots in the restricted area in the 2 games since and only knocked down 5 of those so far. San Antonio is an outlier offensively, so mid-range heavy. They don't take a lot of three-pointers, even though they led the league in three-point percentage. But in this series, since Game 1, they're shooting 31% from 3, 30% on, quote, open threes. At some point, don't they just need to hit some shots to extend this thing?
Matt, you're right on the money there. I mean, they've had open looks. They can't convert. They've shot a high percentage, not a high volume during the regular season, but certainly a high percentage. But so much of what they do, particularly with DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge, is in the mid-range. And that's where those guys like to operate and dominate. You see, White, we talked about earlier, he's not a three-point shooter, so it puts a lot of pressure. But, yeah, they are due for a game where they can knock down some shots. Game 4, they struggled. They didn't hit anything outside the paint after the first quarter. So if they can knock down shots, they have a chance to extend this and take it back to Denver for Game 7.
They were 7 of 24 in Game 5 from three-point range, and not a single Spur hit more than 1. So they've spread it around at least, I guess. A bunch more to get to here, including a look ahead to the Eastern Conference's Final Four, the Bucks and Celtics for the second straight year. Plus, Joel Embiid will see a much bigger and better defensive group in the Raptors in round 2. What to watch for in those series when we come back.
We know confidence hasn't been an issue for James Harden and the Rockets in terms of how many shots they take or the necessity to make them, but didn't make enough, or 1, for example, would have helped. 0 for 13 from 3 in the fourth quarter, which meant Game 4 was going the other way, and an unhappy flight home. But Houston, do we have a problem? More heading into Game 5. Here's their coach, Mike D'Antoni.
Understanding all that, Mike, your players specifically mentioned the rebounding. They were disappointed in that. And obviously in the Game 4 loss, is that just a matter of the lineup that was out there, the small lineup?
No,
is it ever,
no, it
is
had nothing to do with it. A small
Okay.
lineup. We were getting out rebound the whole game. No, it came the energy. And, sometimes the ball bounces the wrong way. I mean, guys, it's like, oh, they didn't know the ball went over this part. If it came there, we'd have got it. So some of it's that. Some of it is we didn't play with the appropriate fear that they had, and they were not losing that game, and they showed it. And we didn't have that we had the first couple games. We just got to get it back.
Mike, what do you remember your reaction being when we found out that Jeff Bzdelik was going to come back to the team this year, and how has your guys' relationship, friendship, coaching relationship evolved over the last couple of years?
No, it's always good. I mean, I don't remember, we've been in contact the whole time, so when he decided to come back, great. I mean, that's what is always open, but relationship's super. He's a good friend, and if he ever came back, we'd still be a good friend. I mean, it's, everybody's got to do what they got to do, and I'm just glad he did it for the team and us and me and probably for him. He's you'd have to talk to him, but what he does is invaluable, and we had a continuity going, and it's just great that we were able to keep it going.
Well, continuity was not kept going in the fourth. Take a look at this, and leave this up, guys, if we can for a minute. Look at where we are on the minutes. And when you look at where the Rockets are, we mentioned no Fareed, right? Didn't play much in the game at all, even though with Capella. Danuel House took more threes than anybody else in the quarter. James Harden only took 3 total shots in the fourth and 2 from 3. So, people try and make things in to fit their rhetoric, and this is why I wanted to show this. Because I sat there the other night after we left here doing post-game. James Harden cost him the game, and James Harden didn't do this, didn't do that. Now, look, he had not had a great series necessarily, did not have a great game. But people want him to be unselfish. I don't think he was selfish enough in the fourth quarter. Do you? I mean, if no one else is shooting, wouldn't you rather him take 8-9 shots in the quarter than take just 2 and watch Danuel House take 3 threes?
Well, I think it comes down to how they're playing. And I think great players shouldn't come into any game or even any quarter with preconceived notions. So basically, if they're playing him a certain type of coverage and they're forcing him to the basket and he doesn't feel comfortable taking those shots, then maybe he shouldn't take those shots. But at the same time, if he can get a floater, he should take it. But he has to understand how the defense is playing him. And James Harden, even though he gets up a lot of shots, he's also unselfish. And he does a great job of a lot of times driving to the lane, drawing 2 to him, and then kicking out to his teammates. And sometimes being a star is delegating responsibility and having faith that your role players can hit some of those shots and open up space for you later on in the game.
Look, Austin Rivers has been a nice piece and a nice addition, right? So is Danuel House, and he's done some nice things for them. But surprises. There was a time early in that quarter where we were watching that lead close. And Chris Paul not on the floor. You got House and Rivers out there at the guard play. Donovan Mitchell, which when we show the Jazz size, you'll see Rivers was on the defensive side of a lot of those plays where Mitchell's going to the basket. Are you surprised that there wasn't more urgency in general from the Rockets? I know Coach D'Antoni kind of says they had more than us, which is more of a pro-Jazz thing than a negative to Houston. But shouldn't we be a little disappointed that Houston didn't put the foot on the pedal, on the throttle, on the proverbial throat, if you would, to get that extra day of rest and end this series?
No question. I mean, obviously they were in control and obviously didn't finish well in that fourth quarter. And, it's a collective effort, but Harden, I mean, he's been the closer. He's been that guy all year. And as you said, 3 shots, just not acceptable. I don't care. Look, he has seen every defense possible. And, I even will take it a step further. And obviously no one wants to use this as an excuse at this point in the season. But, I mean, he did so much this year in terms of carrying his team.
Usage
Rate was so high. Chris Paul was out for a period of time. I mean, his play and what he did on the court was spectacular. And you just wonder if fatigue in some ways is starting to set in. And and that's like I said, I know it's playoffs, nobody wants to hear that, but this was uncharacteristic of James Harden. I've seen him go stretches missing a bunch of shots. Even in Game 3, he missed, I think, his first 10, 12, 15 shots to start the game. So to see him not look to be aggressive and shoot the ball down the stretch, you have to scratch your head and say, okay, what is it? Is it fatigue? Is it confidence? What's going on here? But regardless, I expect him to be more aggressive in the fourth quarter, assuming if it's a close game tonight. But that was uncharacteristic of James Harden that we've seen all year.
Scorers are going to shoot, right? I mean, C.J. McCollum had a brick, one of the worst shots he's had the whole playoffs, and then came back and hit 3 of the biggest shots he's had the whole playoffs.
But I heard you mention fatigue, and that's something that they mentioned last year. And Like, do you think that's really a viable excuse? Like, at this point, with so many players in the league that have to play a lot of minutes and have to do a lot. I know Harden has a lot more responsibility, but what are we really saying here? Like, I never heard Michael Jordan say, man, whew, these playoffs are tough. I'm tired tonight.
Well, he didn't have to take load management B. Wood either. Welcome to 2019.
I'm just, and I use Mike because he's the gold standard.
Right.
But G, you played in the playoffs too. Did you just walk in there and say, man, I'm tired, I don't have it? Like, no one wants to hear the tired. I don't know if James Harden is tired or not, but I know if he doesn't play well and they lose, they won't lose this series. But in the next series against Golden State, if he doesn't play well, I don't think many people are going to want to hear the I'm tired excuse.
He didn't say it, though.
No, he didn't say it.
it.
I was just speculating whether that's the case because unlike last year, I felt like he and Chris Paul, both there was balance in the approach.
It was 1A and 1B.
1A and 1B, and I don't feel like Chris Paul, his usage rate is as high this year. I feel like it's all been sort of James Harden. I'm just speculating. I don't know. It's not a viable excuse. Nobody wants to hear that. Being fatigued this time of year is not an option whatsoever. But it just makes you wonder what went on there. Like, I mean, if he went 0 for 10.
I'd rather that.
You'd rather
I
that,
would rather that
than
personally.
1 for 3.
Yes.
As far as
But
I know people would get on him. I would rather that.
We have seen some games from Harden in the playoffs where he hasn't looked fresh in previous years. You know, there was a year against the Spurs where he got put out where
Game
he
6.
looked absolutely spent. So we've seen this before. And I think it'll be a good testament to who he is as a person, his growth as a player, if he's able to overcome that. And like I said, win, lose, or draw, step up and continuously have good games in the playoffs, especially in the next round.
And to your point real quick, the difference between the regular season and postseason, teams can lock in, they can make adjustments. During the regular season, you see a team, you have a day or two to prepare. Now you have a whole week or two. So, yeah, maybe the Utah Jazz and how they're playing him is giving him troubles, and maybe his confidence was down there in the fourth quarter.
Devil's advocate of that, he takes and hits some of the toughest shots, most contested shots in the league. You got to figure, no offense to Ricky Rubio and the team element and all that stuff, got to take some shots. Some of the other guys, though, were wide open. Not as much of an excuse. For the Jazz, they've missed a lot of open shots. Things have gone wrong, but they fought, got some extra opportunities off the boards, and Donovan was Donovan down the stretch. We'll take a closer look at why.